Hey everyone, welcome back to my channel. Today I want to talk about the movie The Night House. The Night House is directed by David Bruckner, whose most notable work in my opinion is The Ritual, which happens to be my favorite creature horror movie in existence today. I was really interested in this movie when it first came out, and the commercials made the plot look very intriguing, so I thought I'd check it out. The synopsis is as follows. Reeling from the unexpected death of her husband, Beth is left alone in the lakeside home he built for her. She tries as best she can to keep together, but then the dreams come. Disturbing visions of a presence in the house call to her, beckoning with a ghostly allure. But the harsh light of day washes away any proof of a haunting. Against the advice of her friends, she begins digging into his belongings, yearning for answers. So without further ado, let's get into the 6 things that make a movie great. 1. The plot. From the get-go, we know that Beth's husband dies, but from the commercials it made this movie look like perhaps there was a door in the house that led to an alternate dimension where there was a copy of Rebecca Hall. What actually happens is a bit different. It all starts when Beth receives a text on her phone from her husband's cell phone, and then after finding his phone, starts looking through it and finds a picture of what she thinks is herself, but it doesn't look quite like her. This causes her to go into full investigative mode and try to figure out what is going on and why her husband has these pictures on his phone. But the more research she does, the darker this movie gets. This plot unfolds really nicely on screen. You can definitely tell that David Bruckner did a really good job with this movie, just like he did The Ritual. The movie is intense, the pacing is great, but unfortunately it devolves into a demonic thriller. For me, it kind of cheapens the overall value of the movie, and it very easily could have been a movie that wasn't demonic. But because they don't really take the time to explain why the husband did what he did at greater length, it was easier to write this film off as a demonic thriller, which was unfortunate because everything else was pretty great about it. So I have to give the plot a 50-50. 2 is family friendliness. This movie is classified as a horror/thriller, and it's rated R, and it definitely falls into that category. There is rear male nudity in this movie, but it's not sexual nudity. There is some sensuality, there is a decent amount of profanity, but the thing that pushes this movie over the edge is how dark it is. Again, as soon as you see this movie turn from a natural thriller into a demonic thriller, that's when things start to get very, very dark and evil. I used to watch demonic movies all the time, and I would laugh at them because that was where I was at. But the more I watched movies like that, the more I realized I was opening my mind to those things, and I know that there are a lot of people like myself that are pretty sensitive to movies that involve stuff like that. So because of all these things together, family friendliness gets a thumbs down. 3 is acting in the script. When this movie first started, I was worried that it was going to be a lot like Buried or The Guilty, but I was happily surprised. This movie does center around Beth, played by Rebecca Hall, who does fantastic, but the use of the side characters is very well done as well. Beth's friend Claire, played by Sarah Goldberg, does an excellent job in playing the caring friend who starts to show concern the more that Beth dives into her husband's history. And I really liked the character of Mel, played by Vondi Curtis Hall. He did an excellent job in the Daredevil TV series, and his elite acting ability showed through with this as well. Typically, I like to focus on a side character more than the main character, but Rebecca Hall stole the show. She is such an amazing actress, and she definitely had the best performance in this movie by far. And the script of this movie is great. The dialogue between the characters is very good. The friends coming around her and trying to be supportive, but also inquiring as to why things happened is very convincing, and you can feel the awkwardness and the tension coming through the screen. But overall, the acting and the script of this movie gets a thumbs up. 4 is character development. Beth's character is developed very well throughout this film. You get to see the pain that she's in of having just lost her husband and how it affects her in her job, her and her friend groups, and her by herself at home. And as anyone who's gone through grief knows, there's a huge hole that's left there, and you can feel her start filling that hole with this new discovery of something reaching out to her on her husband's phone. And then finding this information, she starts trying to fill that hole with this investigative work that takes a very dark and twisted turn. So her character development alone is fantastic. But what I really wanted to mention is the character development of her husband, Owen. His character is developed for him while he's not even on screen, which is pretty awesome character work, even if it didn't end up being what I wanted it to be. The motive behind why Owen is doing what he's doing, I think would have benefited from an extra 4 to 5 minutes of flashback, and that would have been almost all that it took to make this movie a supernatural thriller and not a demonic thriller. And you can really tell that that 5 minutes of character development is missing, which kind of sucks because this film was actually pretty good for what it was. But overall, character development gets a thumbs up. 5 is visuals and CGI. I don't think there's much CGI in this movie, and if there is, it doesn't take away from the film whatsoever. I love a good horror movie that doesn't rely on jump scares to be creepy, and this film exceeds that expectation. The natural creepiness of this film builds as the film progresses, and they don't rely on jump scares to make this movie scary. They rely on very creative and original visuals, and their attention to detail is great. Some of the visuals in this movie are very dark, but barring those moments, I think the visuals in this movie are fantastic. Visuals and CGI gets a thumbs up. And 6 is rewatchability. Don't get me wrong, this movie is very well done. The thing that affects me most though is that this movie turned from a concept that could have been very original and very interesting and cheapened itself by becoming a demonic thriller. I'd have to say I'm not going to go back and rewatch this film. The nature of the film is too dark and I don't want to fill my mind with those things repeatedly. I have to give rewatchability a thumbs down. With all of these different categories considered, I have to give The Night House a 6.5 out of 10. Rebecca Hall's acting was fantastic. This movie was insanely creepy and it didn't rely on jump scares. And the ideas behind this film and the potential concept could have been fantastic. But the non-sexual nudity in this movie actually was pretty unnecessary, and the overall darkness and demonic nature of this film make it a movie that is not suited for all audiences, especially when 5 to 10 minutes more of explanation behind the character of Owen could have made this movie something else entirely. Thank you so much for watching. If you've seen The Night House, please let me know what you thought about it in the comments below. As always, I appreciate your love and support, and I'll catch you guys and gals in the next one.